Don't even worry about that little 2 for 10. That was just a minuscule preseason game. The GOAT is getting it right. She is in full force, and Raven Johnson comes out and admits Caitlin Clark is the GOAT. Things are heating up for the Fever.
For the past 2 weeks, mainstream sports media pushed a manufactured and deeply toxic storyline, confidently claiming the Indiana Fever locker room was headed for disaster. From their studio desks, they insisted drafting Raven Johnson was a massive organizational mistake, arguing that she and Caitlin Clark could never logically or mentally coexist in the same backcourt. They treated a missed high five on the bench like forensic evidence, trying to convince the basketball world that the infamous 2023 collegiate wave-off was an unforgivable moment that would ruin the most anticipated WNBA season in years. Then, in just 8 seconds of raw practice footage, that entire media narrative was dismantled, exposed, and completely shut down by the players themselves. This is the unfiltered, unapologetic, and fiercely analytical home for the smartest basketball conversations online. Today, we are ending the clickbait narratives and raising the level of discussion by breaking down the tactical chemistry developing between Caitlin Clark and Raven Johnson, the true basketball structure behind the Fever's 109-91 preseason win over the New York Liberty, the specific collective bargaining loophole that could cost Indiana a 6 feet 4 inches sharpshooter, and the undeniable championship culture being built in Indianapolis. If you want basic box score reading, this is not for you. But if you want elite-level basketball analysis, you are exactly where you need to be. It starts with the cultural shift that unfolded behind the closed doors of the Indiana Fever practice facility.
We all know it. Let's take a look. You see it!
Watch this raw practice footage carefully. Caitlin Clark controls the top of the arc, takes 2 deliberate dribbles to freeze the defense, rises from deep logo range, and buries a three-pointer with confidence. It is an impressive act of shot creation, but the real defining moment has nothing to do with the ball finding the net. The camera quickly shifts to rookie point guard Raven Johnson on the sideline. She does not pause, hesitate, or offer a rehearsed reaction. Instead, she points directly at Caitlin Clark, looks straight into the camera with a genuine smile, and loudly delivers 5 words that change the entire perception of the Indiana Fever franchise. The GOAT right there. She then pulled out her phone, uploaded that same clip to her personal Instagram story, and added a GOAT emoji as the caption. She reinforced the message and made it impossible to ignore. To understand the weight of that moment, you have to look at the 3-year path these two athletes traveled. In March 2023, Clark waved off Johnson on national television, creating a viral moment that led to intense and unfair cyberbullying toward Johnson. In April 2024, Johnson answered back by locking Clark down defensively and helping secure a national championship for South Carolina. The media framed it as a lasting feud, insisting these two fierce competitors could never thrive together. Instead, Raven Johnson entered a professional practice facility, left every trace of collegiate ego behind, and publicly recognized the generational greatness of her teammate. This was not a scripted corporate public relations stunt. It was authentic, elite-level emotional maturity. When a rookie point guard openly embraces the hierarchy of the roster, internal friction disappears and true tactical synergy begins to form. That exact psychological connection carried straight onto the basketball court, where it translated into a dominant and highly disciplined preseason performance against the defending Eastern Conference champion New York Liberty. The Liberty entered the Barclays Center expecting to use their overwhelming size, particularly the 6 feet 11 inches presence of Han Su and the elite length of Breanna Stewart, to shut down the Indiana Fever's half-court offense. Head coach Sandy Brondello deployed an aggressive defensive strategy, fully committing to trapping Caitlin Clark nearly 30 feet from the basket. The entire game plan was based on the belief that forcing the ball out of Clark's hands would cause the rest of Indiana's roster to panic and collapse. That assumption proved completely false, and Raven Johnson was the biggest reason why.
We don't know what Stephanie White's vision is. We don't know what her motive is. We don't know if she's going to try to use Raven Johnson against Caitlin Clark in some weird way. Okay, even though talent-wise, it's not even a conversation. But with Stephanie White...
With Tasha Harris sidelined by a knee injury, Raven Johnson was thrown into 17 heavily scrutinized minutes against an elite, championship-tested backcourt. What followed was a masterclass in modern point guard orchestration. Johnson closed the game with 6 points, 2 blocks, 1 steal, and an incredible 8 assists with 0 turnovers. To understand that 8-to-0 assist-to-turnover ratio against the Liberty's trapping defense, you have to examine the structure of the game. When New York Liberty aggressively doubled Caitlin Clark, it created a mathematical 4-on-3 advantage for the Indiana Fever on the weak side. Exploiting that edge requires a secondary playmaker with elite spatial awareness and instant decision-making. You need someone who can catch the swing pass, read the defensive rotation in real time, and move the ball before the defense recovers. Johnson operated with the precision of a seasoned veteran. She never over-dribbled, never forced contested finishes against Han Su, and consistently made the correct read. She caught the ball, recognized the weak side help, and delivered sharp, accurate passes into the shooting pockets of Kelsey Mitchell and Sophie Cunningham. She also pushed the pace relentlessly, forcing New York's larger forwards to burn energy sprinting back on defense. By taking control of those playmaking responsibilities, Johnson allowed Clark to function as a devastating off-ball decoy, creating one of the most dangerous offensive dynamics in women's basketball. That is the exact geometric blueprint of a championship-caliber offense. Should Raven Johnson maintain her ability to consistently initiate the offense and withstand full-court defensive pressure, it would significantly reduce the physical and mental load on Caitlin Clark. Clark would no longer be forced to expend energy bringing the ball up against aggressive hand-checking pressure. Instead, she can flow through staggered screens, utilize pin-downs, and receive the ball already in motion. The New York Liberty defense completely unraveled trying to track Clark off the ball while also containing Johnson's downhill penetration. However, elite guard play represents only one part of a championship blueprint. To endure the demanding 44-game WNBA regular season, a team must also possess uncompromising physical toughness that stops opponents from overpowering finesse players.
Don't just happen in the games. She is witnessing the greatness firsthand in practice every day. Yo, this girl's pulling up from the parking lot. She just hit a 3 from the training table. Like, she sees it, man. Raven Johnson, listen, I'm rolling. I see it's a lot of nonsense going.
And this forces a more objective look at the physical reality of the WNBA, especially the treatment of Caitlin Clark and the essential role of Sophie Cunningham. In the matchup against New York Liberty, broadcast cameras largely missed a physical collision involving Breanna Stewart and Cunningham. Fan footage suggests Stewart abandoned a traditional screening action, leaned into contact, and delivered an elbow into Cunningham's chest area beyond the three-point line. Whether interpreted as incidental or intentional, it was a clear physical moment in a highly competitive environment. Throughout the game, Liberty defenders also applied heavy hand-checking and body contact on Clark at the perimeter, banking on minimal officiating intervention. This context explains why retaining Cunningham was such a crucial off-season decision for the Indiana Fever. She plays with a physical edge, absorbs contact without exaggeration, and stays engaged through it. On the possession in question, she did not react theatrically but instead absorbed the hit and continued competing. Just as importantly, she consistently functions as a physical presence in front of Clark, setting firm screens designed to disrupt defensive momentum and create cleaner offensive spacing. With relentless physicality, she clears driving lanes through borderline aggressive force and builds a protective bubble around the franchise point guard, forcing opposing defenses to absorb a heavy physical toll if they want to pressure the perimeter. She also backed that presence with elite efficiency, finishing with 13 points and knocking down 3 crucial three-pointers. She delivers all-star level production on a heavily discounted $665,000 contract, embodying the gritty, uncompromising edge the Indiana Fever desperately need for a postseason push. However, despite the tactical execution on the court, a significant organizational cloud still looms over the Indiana Fever front office. The focus now shifts to salary cap mechanics and the looming roster decisions that will ultimately define the franchise's direction. Because of major financial commitments to the veteran core, including Kelsey Mitchell's Supermax, Aaliyah Boston's extension, and the guaranteed deals of Maisha Hines-Allen and Monique Billings, the Indiana Fever are effectively constrained by the WNBA hard cap. They currently carry 16 players in training camp, while league rules strictly limit teams to a 12-player active roster. This mathematical reality places 6 feet 4 inches rookie sharpshooter Justine Pat directly on the roster bubble, creating a situation where the Fever risk losing a valuable developmental asset for nothing.
To a team who was clicking on all cylinders offensively post-Olympic break under Christy Sides and have tried to just completely change things, people don't like it. People don't like it, and I'm one of those people. And the second I see or smell some funny business going on,
Let us take an objective look at Justine Pat's preseason performance. In exactly 10 minutes of limited action against a championship-level defense, she scored 8 points, shooting 2 for 3 from beyond the arc and a perfect 2 for 2 from the free throw line. She also finished with a striking plus 16 plus-minus rating. In modern basketball analytics, a 6 feet 4 inches forward with a quick, high-release three-point shot profile is considered a premium spacing asset. When Pat is on the floor, she fundamentally changes defensive geometry. A standard 5 feet 10 inches guard cannot realistically contest her release point, forcing opposing defenses to switch a larger forward onto the perimeter, which in turn opens driving lanes for Caitlin Clark or interior opportunities for Aaliyah Boston. However, the Indiana Fever's salary cap situation is extremely restrictive, prompting front office executives Lynn Dunn and Kelly Krauskopf to reportedly consider a high-risk CBA mechanism involving developmental roster structuring. To clarify, a developmental contract is a lower-cost roster designation that typically functions as a practice squad-style role and does not carry the same salary cap impact as a standard active roster spot. However, the critical drawback is exposure. Players on these deals are not protected in the same way as standard contracts. If the Fever attempt to assign Justine Pat to such a structure for cap flexibility, she would become immediately available to the rest of the league. Any of the other WNBA franchises could legally offer her a full active roster contract at any time, turning a financial workaround into a potential roster loss. If that scenario occurs, Justine Pat would immediately be removed from the Indiana Fever organization, and the Fever would receive no compensation in return. There is no right to match the offer and no mechanism for refusal. This is not an abstract theory, it is a realistic outcome in a league where front offices actively monitor waiver wires and developmental pipelines. Teams like the Phoenix Mercury have historically maintained roster flexibility specifically to target high-upside additions, while rebuilding franchises such as the Washington Mystics and the Los Angeles Sparks consistently search for young, elite shooters with size to accelerate their timelines. If the Indiana Fever attempt to solve cap constraints by exposing a 6 feet 4 inches floor spacing shooter to the open market, it would be widely viewed as a significant misstep in asset management. A player with that type of specialized offensive value is not typically developed for the benefit of rival rotations, and opposing general managers would be quick to capitalize on any availability. As training camp approaches its final stage, the narrative around the Indiana Fever has shifted away from manufactured locker room speculation toward legitimate on-court execution. Raven Johnson and Caitlin Clark have established a visible foundation of mutual respect that raises the ceiling of the backcourt. Kelsey Mitchell and Sophie Cunningham have shown the ability to punish defenses that overcommit to Clark, while the transition offense appears significantly faster and the secondary playmaking noticeably more refined. The only remaining challenge for the Indiana Fever is no longer about flashes of talent or short-term scoring bursts, but the deeper structural discipline required to properly manage a roster that is beginning to function like a playoff-caliber unit ahead of schedule. Head coach Stephanie White is now tasked with reintegrating Aaliyah Boston and Lexi Hull into a rotation that has already proven it can generate 109 points without their presence, which creates a rare coaching dilemma: how to restore established starters without disrupting emerging chemistry, pace, and spacing that has already found rhythm in transition-heavy lineups. This is where elite coaching is truly tested, not in designing offense but in preserving efficiency while rebalancing roles under pressure. At the same time, the front office is operating under the harsh, unforgiving mathematics of the CBA, where every contract slot and roster decision carries amplified consequences. The Indiana Fever cannot simply retain every promising piece, meaning difficult cuts or exposure decisions become unavoidable. In this environment, even developmental talent becomes a strategic asset rather than a developmental luxury, and rival organizations are actively monitoring these roster constraints, waiting for any opportunity to capitalize on available upside across the league ecosystem. The pressure is not isolated to Indiana, it is systemic, and every decision is being evaluated through a competitive league-wide lens. As the regular season opener approaches rapidly, internal evaluations are no longer theoretical. They are immediate, visible, and performance-driven. Every rotation experiment, every substitution pattern, and every closing lineup is now functioning as a live preview of the team's long-term identity. A massive and genuine appreciation goes out to loyal channel members Sarah, Mark, and David, whose consistent support allows this level of detailed, film-style basketball breakdown to exist. This is what separates surface-level commentary from true tactical analysis. understanding spacing, structure, and roster construction rather than just headlines. If you value that kind of objective, high-level WNBA breakdown, make sure to subscribe and stay connected. Drop your predictions below. Does Raven Johnson's control of tempo and playmaking officially secure her a permanent starting role? And can the Fever front office realistically find a mathematical pathway to protect Justine Pat within roster limits? The next preseason clash against the Dallas Wings is only days away, and with it comes the final wave of roster decisions that will define the structure of this team moving forward.